Hello, great people. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when and where you're following this conversation from across Africa and beyond. This is the Prokmura podcast, and I am your host, Sam Abuya. Today, we are going to have a very interesting conversation around FoRB violations in Africa. And to help us in this discussion, we have a panel of experts. Here in studio, we have Sheikh Musa Mwale, who is from the Council of Imams in Kenya. We also have Zaina Hassan, who is a FoRB practitioner, who is joining us virtually all the way from the coastal region of Kenya, in Mombasa to be specific, and all the way from Nigeria. We also are joined by Reverend Ukoha Ngobia. Reverend Ukoha is a country coordinator for FoRB in Nigeria. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. If we can start with you, Sheikh, here in studio, help us understand what does FoRB mean to you as an individual and as well as a religious leader?
Well, actually, by the title, by the name of it, that is freedom of religion and belief.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, FoRB is supposed to give communities space to be able to relate, to be able to express themselves,
Mm-hmm.
without being looked at as different, without being victimized for what they believe in,
Mm-hmm.
or what they actually practice.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at FoRB in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
we are talking of, first of all, being confronted by, we could call them retrogressive cultural practices,
Mm-hmm.
that would be in conflict with FoRB values,
Mm-hmm.
but also appreciating that yes, to some people they would seem retrogressive,
Mm-hmm.
but to the practice communities,
Mm-hmm.
they are actually progressive cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the challenge that as a religious practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
or as religious communities,
Mm-hmm.
we face
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to actualizing FoRB in terms of giving the space,
Mm-hmm.
or that freedom,
Mm-hmm.
for people to practice their cultural beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
But the same cultural beliefs are harmful.
Mm-hmm.
Harmful to self, harmful to community,
Mm-hmm.
and of course the general populace.
Mm-hmm.
So those are that's one of the challenge for me where I see.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the other challenge would be institutionalist discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
especially where in countries where certain religious belief or religious communities are predominant.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore you find other communities that are minority,
Mm-hmm.
they face a lot of discrimination.
Oh.
The members face discrimination
Mm-hmm.
in terms of practicing
Mm-hmm.
the laws of the country. We have some countries that have been declared strictly belonging to a certain or professing a certain religious tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore the level of tolerance
Mm-hmm.
to appreciate other beliefs or other religious tradition
Mm-hmm.
becomes a challenge.
Mhm.
And therefore,
Mhm.
those people who profess that different belief
Mm-hmm.
then find it difficult in terms of fulfilling or practicing their belief in terms of religion.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, those are some of the challenges that I could mention that as a religious communities we face when it comes to FoRB.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great hearing you, Sheikh. And now, as we go to Zena, would you help us in painting a picture in terms of what FoRB means to you? What is the state of FoRB as far as your region is concerned? Even before we delve into now these violations, what does FoRB mean to you, and what is the state of FoRB in your region?
I would agree that it's just in recent years, maybe 10, 20 years ago, that I did come to realize, that FoRB is really bigger than myself. FoRB is really bigger than my religion, which is Islam. But, FoRB has all this aspect, of, letting other people, allowing them practice, preach, worship, whatever they want. And I think also society had a very big role to play, in terms of really instilling values on us as a Muslim community, on not othering the other person, but actually looking at them as, as human. You would agree with me that in recent years, the coast of Kenya has actually faced a lot of challenges when it comes to FoRB violations. I won't speak of very many, but I'll just pick one, which I feel that has really affected the Muslim and Christian relations here along the coast. And this has been largely, violent extremism, or, the war on terror, vis-a-vis the security concerns and situations. For those of us that are coming from Kenya would agree with me that the coast has faced the brunt of violent extremism, which includes, issues around profiling of the Muslim community, extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, including, arbitrary arrests. It's become very difficult for somebody to move from point A to point B without them really having not to be profiled. And I think this has also been a problem because most of the violent extremist groups have pledged allegiance to the Islam religion. But in the process, the whole Islamic community, or the whole Muslim community, has actually been put into this box, which is, in my opinion, is actually a radar, where you face extra scrutiny, you face extra questions, you face extra profiling. But this is not to say that our friends that come from the other faith, do not face these challenges, but greatly, from a majority, I would say like 70 to 80% of the population here in the coast, I would say that the Muslim followers, or those who subscribe to the Islamic religions, are the ones bearing the brunt, when it comes to the war on terror, or violent extremism, with relation to security concerns. And yes, I do agree that we have very many other challenges related to FoRB. I think Sheikh just highlighted, matters of retrogressive cultures, issues around female genital mutilations that sometimes are actually alluded to, certain religious teachings, including very many others. But the one at heart for me, my colleagues, would be, violent extremism and the security concerns here in the coast. Thank you.
Zena, thank you for that. And as we cross borders, valleys, and mountains all the way to Nigeria, Reverend Ukoha, can you help us understand the status of FoRB in Nigeria? That is, and what does that mean to you as a FoRB practitioner in Nigeria? Because we understand Nigeria has been one of the countries that is has been experiencing quite a challenge as far as FoRB is concerned. What is the status of FoRB in Nigeria, and what does that mean to you?
Thank you very much, Sam, for asking. Let me first and foremost state what FoRB means to me. When we talk about FoRB generally, even though generally we look at FoRB as a freedom of expression, as a person I look beyond religion when I talk about FoRB. As a TOT trainer of FoRB, I look at FoRB from the context of everyday life experience, everyday life experience of manifesting one's expression, one's conscience, having one right to live, right to go to school, right for education, right to have all the basic amenities in life. So when I look at it that way, it helps to bring to the table the fact that issues about FoRB goes beyond religion. There are state actors that are involved. If the state is not involved in providing some of these amenities, the tendency is that there's going to be a wide range of violation of rights of the people to exist. And if the state is not doing what they ought to do, or the religious bodies are not doing what they ought to do in terms of allowing others to coexist, there is going to be a high level of violation in various fronts. And also, if various genders are not doing what they ought to do in terms of promoting FoRB, it means that there's going to be a high level of FoRB violation that span across gender and all the rest. Now, looking at FoRB from this point of view, in Nigeria, FoRB violation or FoRB promotion is multi-dimensional. It's multi-dimensional in the sense that when you go to various regions, you see different form of violation. You go to the West, it is like profiling of indigenous profiling. You go to the South or Southeast, it's more about religious profiling. You also go to North, you see different form of FoRB violation. So it depends on the region where you find yourself. That is the kind of FoRB violation that is witnessed. Like now, one of the major FoRB violation we witness in my country, Nigeria, is that of shutting down of voices. You come to see that various political parties or the ruling party want to shut down the voices of the minority political parties. You have this concept of opposition parties. When opposition parties are trying to express their feeling about governance, they are trying to advocate for good governance. You see the political parties in the seat of power begin to look at it from point of view of you lost election. That means what they are saying technically, because you lost election, you don't have any right to express yourself anymore. And it's very dominant in Nigeria today. For instance, some of the youth who are feeling the pressure of hunger, the economic pressure, economic deprivation in Nigeria today, they have declared 1st and 10th of August as the day they are going to the street to protest. And they have said one of the highlights of their protest is putting pressure on government, or especially the ruling party, to bring down the cost of governance, bring down the cost of governance, providing basic amenities for the citizens to benefit from the dividend of democracy. Whereas the ruling parties are saying, don't go to protest. Look at what happened in Kenya the other day. Protest does not pay anyone anything. So you see that this idea of clamping down on voices, the high privilege clamping down on the voices of the less privileged, is prevalent in the Nigerian society. The ruling class does not want to hear anything different from what they don't want to hear anything different apart from praising them, praising the government for what they are doing. But what they are not doing well, they don't want to hear those kind of voices. So I want to look at four violations from this idea of not allowing people to express themselves or how they want to be governed, how they want the state to look like. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is when you come, you see majority religion trying to not to give space for minority religion to coexist. For instance, in the northern part of Nigeria, the majority religion is Islamic religion. You see where, for instance, the minority religion, Christianity and other religions are not giving space. That also happened when you come to the east. You have Christianity as the majority religion, and when some of the states where this religion cover, you see, for instance, you don't see anyone from those minority religion getting appointment, even when they merit those appointments. Appointment is not given on the basis of merit, but given on the basis of ethnicity, given on the basis of religious inclination, affiliation, given on the basis of how close those who are appointing see the people who the appointees are to them. These are some of the things you see. People are not being allowed to express. They are not allowed also. The other dimension is where you see people are not being given appointment because of their gender. They are not given an appointment because of their sex. Of course, some of these appointments are being looked at from the gender lens. They are being looked at for the gender lens. For instance, you see a country of over 200 million of Nigerians. You talk about how many of these state governors. We have about 36 states in Nigeria. You ask how many of the state governors are women. You will see that almost 100% are male. And when you come to legislators, you see that greater percentage of the legislators appointees are male, masculine. And that does not mean that the feminine are not qualified, but because of this issue of how they perceive government, they see government from lenses of gender lens. And If FoRB must be promoted, then we have to give level playing ground for people regardless of their sex, regardless of their religion, regardless of their tribal affiliation. Meritocracy has to be the order of the day. So that is why this advocacy must increase. The tempo must increase so that people look at FoRB from beyond religious lens. Look at it, our day-to-day living. How are we giving space? You know, when government is allocating resources, there's no clear criteria, there's no defined criteria or defined programmatic approach on how to allocate these resources. They are just allocating resources based on how close small and medium scale industry, government palliative is being distributed in a lopsided manner. So it is not being distributed equally. And you see the people who actually need the palliative are not getting it. Those who are getting palliative are people who are close to government.
Okay,
So
okay.
let me end at this juncture. Thank you.
Oh, okay. If I can, I want to jump in, Reverend Ukoha, and bring on board Sheikh Musa. We are with him here in studio, as I mentioned. I think if listening to Reverend Ukoha, who is talking to us from Nigeria, and again listening to Zena, who is also speaking to us from Mombasa, they mentioned something. Zena mentioned something to do with culture, and now Reverend Ukoha is mentioning something to do with day-to-day living in relation to FoRB. And I think these three things, they meet at some point, especially culture. From where you sit, do you think culture has been an impediment in terms of promoting FoRB or realizing that freedom of religion for all? And what would you say is the impact of that?
Yeah, thank you very much. One is that, of course, uh, when you talk about culture, and as I mentioned earlier, what I might perceive as retrogressive might not be perceived the same way by the person practicing that kind of culture.
Mm.
Our sister mentioned about FGM, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Largely, we know that FGM is harmful.
Mm-hmm.
It has been proved both scientifically and socially.
Mm-hmm.
But the communities that practice it
Mm-hmm.
don't see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, for us who universally have accepted that it's retrogressive,
Mm-hmm.
is to try to reach out
Mm-hmm.
and conduct advocacy programs
Mm-hmm.
amongst those communities that are practicing,
Mm-hmm.
so that we tell them the side effects.
Mm-hmm.
We show them the negativity of that kind of practice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a bit tricky when you talk about culture.
Mm-hmm.
It is very sensitive because it's what people believe in and it's what people have been practicing for ages.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, bringing it out of them
Mm-hmm.
is a challenge. So yes, it is a challenge when it comes to religious practitioners to reach out and tell people that that is not, we should not espouse those kind of values because they're harmful. And of course, the Reverend has mentioned the day-to-day life in terms of FoRB practices. This cuts across because we are not, the political elites do not give space to the common citizens, the citizenry. The citizens give up their power of representation to the politicians. So naturally, politicians are supposed to be employees of citizens. But what has been happening is that whenever they reach up there, then they become the masters of those people who actually voted them in. And therefore, yes, as practitioners of FoRB, we need to look for a way of empowering communities and to be able to actually have recourse mechanism on how they can deal with people they vote for to represent them. and basically how they can also deal with government. Of course, we have seen it in Kenya that the Gen Z have gone to the streets and they're demanding certain things, which is good governance, accountability, and that kind of thing. But are the political elites listening? Because they have the power and they have the positions to make policies and to make certain decisions. They might not listen. So the only recourse is that come the general election, then that's the only time a citizen might practice their power to recall them. But it's a long time to go. It's a long shot. All we need to do is, I think, as practitioners, maybe we need to target young people. We need to target people who are growing up, so that they espouse values of FoRB, so that in their adult life, they actually live FoRB and they don't go contrary to those values. You know, when you teach a child certain values, honesty, you know, then they grow up with it. But if you try to teach, as they say, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks, it becomes very difficult to confront the politicians now and ask them to change, because that's what they're used to do.
That's true.
So basically, I think when you talk about culture, when you talk about the day-to-day violations of people's rights, including bad governance, corruption, not being represented truthfully by people in power, putting up policies that do not favor the community, and also looking at the West, the way they continue colonizing those former colonies through policies and other support mechanisms, then these are some of the challenges that we face as FoRB practitioners, and these are some of the things that we should look ways of confronting them and trying to address them.
Okay, that's great. Listening to, I think I'm gathering a lot. And even as we go to Zena, who is coming to us from the coastal region of Kenya, Zena, help us understand what are some of the impact of these FoRB violations from where you sit, and probably if there are some other cases that you can share with us as far as FoRB violations go. What is the impact of that? And we can share with us, as I said, some of these violation cases that you probably come across on a daily basis.
Thank you very much. I just have a small point before I forget, which is actually a rejoinder to what Sheikh has just highlighted, that, you know, we need to ensure that the young people or the youth of today are actually made aware of what FoRB really is. I'm also thinking that the youth have moved away from the normal traditional spaces and move to the online platforms, you know, like the digital spaces. And this is where we can see, you know, active mobilization taking place. The current protest, you know, being organized by the Gen Zs actually has no physical location. They say they're actually leaderless, the tribeless, you know, and all that, you know. It goes on to show that the young people are actually moving away from the traditional setups that we're used to, where we would have, you know, normal day-to-day conversations, and taking them a step higher. The only thing that they need is access to internet, you know, a smartphone, you know, or just a gadget that can help them connect to the other person. So in my opinion, I actually feel the values and the teachings around FoRB can actually be taken a step higher, you know, on the online spaces and the digital platforms. And why I'm saying this, yesterday I was in a meeting in one of the counties here along the coast, and in the forum, community members were actually saying everything is well and good at the grassroots level, but we actually feel that the most harm is actually happening on online spaces. You know, that is where you see people creating the divides, you know, between people of the Muslim, Islam, or of any other faith. So they were actually lobbying in that particular meeting that, you know, forums like this should actually move away from sitting in a community or social hall, and to actually move into those online spaces so that you can actually target the youth and young people. So over to your question, Sam. One of the things that I've really seen happening in terms of the challenges around FoRB violation is the aspects around discrimination or marginalization of a particular religion or of a particular community. You would agree with me that the recent occurrence that happened in Kilifi around the Shakahola massacre really painted this other picture that terrorism or extremism is not just about the Islamic faith, but now that the preacher has done what he did, a lot of practitioners within the country are asking themselves, does this actually quantify to be extreme? Can we actually categorize it under terrorism? And all of a sudden there was this notion and there was this rift between the Muslims and the Christians in the community, saying now that it is a Christian, who has committed these atrocities, will the government intervene? Will the government charge this particular person under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, or exactly, constitutionally, where would this kind of atrocity, be placed? And there were also online conversations happening that if this was a Muslim who had committed this atrocity, or if this was somebody else from another faith, then we are sure that the response of government, of security actors and other practitioners would definitely be a different story. So that also is a debate that is currently brewing. If you look at spaces like TikTok, you look at spaces like WhatsApp groups, where people are having these very huge conversations around, government's response towards terrorism or extremism that they term Islam, and, extremism that they term as Christian or, of ATR. And perhaps, as a result of these conversations, maybe this is why we are seeing there's a lot of crackdown, on institutions of worship. There've been cases in Kwale County where community members actually spotted a church within a forest, and they were quickly able to alert the security officers that, there's something going around in the forest. So that discrimination also comes in. I would also give another example. Look at the case of Mpeketoni, Lamu, all the way to Kiunga border, where we are having conversations, that are really as a result of grievances that community members do have in those communities. One community is actually looking at the other communities and as an outsider, and the other community is actually looking at this other community as indigenous. So there's been those tensions, but they all boil down to land disputes. So again, another challenge, that is, can be alluded to for violation could be the disputes around, land issues between farmers and herders, because predominantly the herders are the Muslim community, and the farmers are usually Christian communities in those parts of Kenya. So that also is a rift and actually a tension that is brewing. Another could be around the laws, the policies, the regulations. I think two of the speakers had actually commented that FoRB is the total well-being. It's not just about religion, but it's also about how I live my day-to-day life. But if I live my day-to-day life and I feel that there's something restricting me from either wearing my hijab, from either keeping my dreadlocks because I come from the Rastafari community, or from keeping my turban because I come from maybe a Hindu kind of religion, then the laws are really not favorable to me, such that, the requirement within the learning institution requires that I need to be in a school uniform that is uniform to all of us. So the moment I introduce a hijab, the moment I introduce dreadlocks, the moment I introduce a turban or trousers, then, at that particular moment, I have destroyed everything. And Sam, you can agree with me that there has been a lot of cases within Kenya in relation to the schools regulation and the attire of the learners. And it really didn't it cuts across, it's not just about the hijab, but it goes a long way to turbans, to trousers, to dreadlocks, and so on and so forth. So again, I find that there are concerns and there's issues around the policies and around how they are enforced or how they are regulated. And if I could also pinpoint another policy that I really feel that has an issue is the Prevention of Terrorism Act, the Porter Act. That first of all, communities are not really aware of what the Porter Act is, but at the same time, the Porter Act is there to wait for me to actually either mess or even sometimes not mess, but then find myself at the wrong sides of the law. So again, if you listen to the feelings of the people, you would hear a lot of sentiments that the Porter Act was specifically put in place for a particular religion and really not for all of us. And people actually can give you cases and pinpoint examples of where and how they feel that the Porter Act has really targeted a particular religion or a particular community, to the extent that it's become very difficult for some members of communities to actually practice and freely worship or believe what they want to believe in. And on my last point, Sam, I choose to pick the African traditional religion, specifically the Kayas, because of my experience working with the Kayas. The call for the Kaya has always been the protection and the preservation of holy and sacred sites. But then again, at the same time, whatever the Kayas do, their practices, their belief, actually is also nested within the Witchcraft Act here in Kenya. And some of the practices or some of the things that they do are actually considered not okay when they look at the Witchcraft Act. Then also it begs the question of does it mean that they are not protected by Article 32 of our Constitution? Does it mean that they cannot do ABC? Because when they do ABC, then the Witchcraft Act is just right there saying, actually, this has been categorized as paraphernalia or this and that. So that also is another a big area of concern at the moment that is drawing a lot of debate. I think I've seen it happening here in Kwale County and Kilifi County, and now stakeholders such as the Kenya Forest Service, the National Environment and Management Authority, including the National Museums of Kenya, are actually now coming on board to start having conversations around how then do we protect these holy sites or preserve this particular environment that our colleagues from the ATR actually subscribe to. So those are some of the few examples, Sam, that I would give. Thank you.
Allow me to jump in because you've
Sure.
mentioned something very important. Like, how then do we come in? I think, Sheikh, you can be thinking about that, especially as far as the interventions are concerned in terms of mitigating some of these violations of FoRB, especially across Africa. But allow us to cross over to Nigeria and bring back Reverend Ukoha. You were telling us something as far as the FoRB violations are concerned, and how you look at FoRB in Nigeria from the perspective of a FoRB practitioner. And as you continue telling us that briefly, also mention to us some of the interventions that you think probably can be taken to safeguard FoRB or promote FoRB and allow people that freedom of religion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me just highlight what Sheikh said about the issue of advocacy. Sheikh asked a question whether the government is hearing. I will not say whether they are hearing or not, but what I would rather say is that one of the interventions we need to do is to increase our tempo, the tempo of advocacy. We need to assume that they are hearing, and we need to devise more strategy on aggressive sensitization. Aggressive sensitization in the sense that even though there are laws, international law that regulate the freedom of expression, that promote it, we have the international law, we have African charters, various forms of law that have been agreed upon. And these laws were signed by all the countries in Africa and beyond. So it is our place as promoters to continue our advocacy, not to lose our strength, not to allow the violation to overwhelm us. That means, number one, continue in aggressive sensitization. Use what we call here in Nigeria um, a kind of grassroots mobilization. Grassroots mobilization is a strategy whereby we have a town hall meetings, where we do organize sensitization to create more awareness. More awareness. Have this documentary, like we have a number of documentaries on FoRB violation. When we bring it to town hall, we allow people to interrogate and interact with it. When they are interacting with it, it will help to create more awareness. Number two, the use of media. Let me appreciate Pugmura. Pugmura have done a lot. Using of media space, the social media, sharing of all these stories, some of the sensitive stories, and some of the campaign, using the media space. Media, like my sister Zainab have already observed, is one of the platforms where you can use to engage young people, reach out to young people. You see the young people are on the WhatsApp, they are on the Facebook, they are on the Twitter. So when we go to the media space, use it as a platform to create awareness, to interact, to even sample and feel the opinion of the masses. Media space can be used as a kind of platform. Then number three, making good use of our religious platform. When we talk about Africa, there's no game saying the fact that the Africa comprises greater number of Christians and Muslims in Africa. Why we have traditionalists? I think it appears to me that the religious platform have not been well utilized as a platform to do sensitization. Let me ask a question. How many of our religious leaders have promoted FoRB in their churches, in their mosque? How many? So, we have a lot of assignment as religious leaders to promote it using our platform. It doesn't cost us much to maybe once every quarter or once every year or twice every year to create this awareness using our religious platform. While we try to engage with the government to do their part, as religious leaders, we also need to engage to do our part using our religious institution. For instance, in my religious institution in Nigeria here, I just created a course called Freedom of FoRB. FoRB, when I say FoRB, under Christian Muslim relation, I created a platform or a unit called FoRB. And for the first time, my students were able to hear about FoRB and they engaged. They asked, what is it all about? So what I'm just saying is that using our religious platform, our madrasas, our religious institution, there's a basis for that. There's a scriptural basis for that, biblical basis for that, Quranic basis for that, where Quran say, you, your religion, I, my religion. So we can use that as a basis to promote FoRB, to tell people that we can coexist, we can allow people to express their religion without feeling that we have lost anything, because even God himself created all these religions. So I've mentioned all these platforms. Finally, I also want to say another platform we can use is the use of our newspapers. We can publish articles in our newspapers. Um, there are people who may not have time to come and sit down to listen to the radio or to go to social media, but they buy newspapers on a regular basis. So let's explore the media spaces, whether print media or audio media or writing media, all forms of media or social media, to do this sensitization and create awareness. I just missed one. The final one is that it is important that once in a while or periodically, for promoters like I and Sheikh, we can jointly sponsor it. Jointly sponsor it. We can be co-sponsors of a particular FoRB program. Two religious leaders, bringing our female counterpart, three of us or four of us, we just jointly sponsor it and say we want to create awareness on FoRB using any platform, whether going to the media or the road. So let's not leave it for Pokmura alone. We can, after this conversation, deliberately decide to also promote FoRB on our own. I think with all these points, it can help to promote FoRB in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Okoha. It's always great having you on set because you give a lot of wisdom, if you allow me to say that, and as far as FOB is concerned. I had asked Sheikh something in terms of FOB interventions that can be taken to address some of these violations that we've seen across Africa, particularly when, for instance, when Zena talked about what happened in the coastal region of Kenya, where people were lured into fasting to death in the pretext of meeting their savior. You see, religion is highly implicated in some of these violations. So, what are some of these interventions that can be taken, especially even from a religious point of view, you being a religious leader? And again, as Reverend Ukoha is talking about religious leaders, the role that they can play in terms of promoting FOB.
Thank you very much. One is that I think the event at the coast, it's not, of course, isolated. We've seen quite a number of bizarre events being conducted by apparently people or men of God, or both men and women of God. I think one, it's just in order for, as a religious community, to call to order such religious, I can't call them religious leaders, but maybe practitioners who have formed some cults, because those are cults. When you tell people to do certain things or to believe in a certain way, of course, people find a way of using holy scriptures to capture people's mind.
That's true.
But it's wrong. One, as religious communities, we should also go out there and try to propagate the right scriptures. And call upon people to be able to not to be held captive by individuals, but to look at the broader interpretation of the word of God. But also, as we do that, we also have to intensify and call to order those preachers or evangelists who are misusing the scriptures for their own personal gains. So it is a tall order for all of us, because we all stand accused when such a things happen, because they're happening in what we refer to as the house of God or spaces of God. And that's why people believe, because people believe religious leaders. And when you tell them, we have seen when people are told it's the end of the world and therefore you have to either commit suicide by taking poison or burning yourself in the house of God, or like now those ones. We say that the government has to be very, very strict, because those are acts of terrorism. As my sister has mentioned, unfortunately, the media has played this, that when a member who professes Islam is found in a criminal activity, then it's termed terrorism. But a member who does not profess Islam, when they're found engaging in criminal activities, then it's not even taken as a crime. So these are criminal activities, luring people to kill people, or even luring people to sell off their properties. And donate everything to yourself. That is fraud. And therefore, we call upon the government, and we are willing to collaborate with government to point out such a people amongst our midst, so that government can take action. Of course, we are also trying to give government a blank check to start intimidating religious communities, which is unfortunate. But you see, when it reaches there, the government has the right to protect the life of people.
That's true.
And the properties of people. What do they do? And that's why in Kenya there's been a talk that they even want to sanction even the level of education that a clergy should have. They want to sanction the registration of religious institutions. This was not there, but because of the misuse of the scriptures by people, now this is coming to coming to the fore. It's unfortunate. So as a religious community, as practitioners of FoRB, we need to call to order such individuals. As practitioners of FoRB, we need to espouse the human sanctity of human life and sanctity of private property or people's property. So we cannot coerce people or lure people to sell off their wealth, to sell off their property. We cannot lure people to practice practices that harm them in any way. We need to just preach the Holy Scripture, the Word of God, and where people do not agree with you, it's okay. I mean, that's why God, in His wisdom, allowed humanity to be diverse and allowed us to profess different religious traditions.
That's true.
Otherwise, I mean, in Islam, God tells us, if I wanted, I would have made you one. I would have made religion one. But I have allowed this diversity for purposes of all of us appreciating and knowing each other. But in terms of what Zena mentioned, there's a thin line between the cultural practices and some harmful practices. When things are done in secrecy, for example, I know the Kaya, the way they worship in the forests, just like the Dini ya Musambwa in Kenya, they worship in mountains and all that. You see, when things are done in secrecy, then they leave room for speculation.
That's true.
And then they also leave room for abuse, you know. So, but when things are done openly, then people will not doubt. So the government will be at a crossroad to define certain cultural practices as rightful cultural practices or harmful. If something is done in secrecy and it involves harming the human person or human life, then of course the government will have to move in. And as FoRB practitioners, we will also have to say this is not right. But like the Kaya and many other ATRs who have their own cultural beliefs and that, if those beliefs do not harm the person, do not harm individuals, including the believers themselves, I don't think is right to stop them from practicing.
Okay, to our viewers and those following us, ATR, I think, Sheikh, if I'm not wrong, is the African traditional religions.
Yes.
Yes. And it sounds like there is a lot that we need to talk about in terms of religious leaders, the role and the place of religious leaders in terms of promoting FoRB. But that will come to you in another episode. That one I can promise. So, Sheikh, probably we will have you again here and some our good friends here as well.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, yes. Sheikh, sorry, not Sheikh, but Zena. I might be wrong, but I can see you're a young person as well. So, would you help us understand from where we sit as we bring this home, as we wind up this conversation? What is the future of FoRB to you? How does it look from where you sit as a young person?
Thank you very much, Sam, and you're definitely right. I'm a young person, and let me be honest with the three of you that my passion around FoRB is not very old. I think it's been around 3 years now that I'm really passionate about FoRB related matters as a young person. And just as I had shared initially, and this can actually be alluded to my experiences, my upbringing and all these kinds of things, the discrimination that I have seen happening in our society. And then I just asked myself, is there anything that I can do as a young person? Our sheikhs, our imams, perhaps are now old, our pastors, our reverends, quite old right now. Is there something that I can learn from them? Is it allowed for me to go into a place of worship and, just sit with the pastor one day and just have these conversations? And the answer, let me tell you, Sam, has been a yes. I have moved into temples, I have moved into churches, even in places where it would not be easy, like Garissa, for a Muslim to be seen walking to a church. But I have walked into churches, and I've had really candid conversations with, preachers of the Christian religion. And let me tell you for a fact, everybody has the same message that we need to promote, interfaith dialogues, interfaith conversations, and interfaith collaborations. But as a young person, I actually believe that charity begins at home. It actually starts with me and those around me who profess the Islamic faith. We need to see it as a religion and have an intra conversation. We need to understand, what are these issues that we have, of persons that all of a different faith. For sure, we cannot go have a conversation with Christians at the moment, with Hindus at the moment, yet we have not really understood ourselves as Muslims. So for me, that has been a very big challenge that I'm really trying to maneuver, mobilizing young people like myself to actually sit down and have conversations as Muslims, while my other colleagues of the Christian faith are also mobilizing their colleagues and also friends of the Christian faith so that they can have those conversations and demystify the myths and misconceptions that we could be having of the other religions. And once we are done with having these intra conversations, then now we are ready. We have built courage, and we are ready now to move into the inter conversations where now we bring Muslims and Christians together to have these candid conversations. And just like Sheikh has said, if God wanted to create us as one, he could have. There's actually an Islamic verse within the Quran that says, we have created you into nations and tribes so that you may know each other. And similar to that is, the fingers on your hands are not equal, and if God really wanted those fingers to be equal, he would have made them equal. So there is a lot of wisdom behind this verse, that the essence was for you to be different so that you may know each other, you can learn from each other, and you can actually embrace the differences that come out of you. So for me, at a personal level, at this age, with this little experience that I have around FoRB of about 3 to 4 years, to be honest, Sam, I see no difference between myself and a colleague that is from a Christian faith. We profess, we actually pray to the same God. Just a few differences, but when you look at the commonalities are many. So as a young person, Sam, that is what I'm really advocating for at the moment, for us to have those intra conversations before we are actually ready to engage with colleagues from other faiths. And I'm actually doing this using digital platforms, making use of WhatsApp groups that I'm already in, making use of Twitter, making use of my LinkedIn page, making use of Facebook pages, and so on and so forth. So I'm really leveraging on technology to ensure that we are actually promoting tolerance, we are respecting each other despite the religions that we are coming in, and above all, living in harmony. Thank you.
Thank you, Zena. That's really good. Especially, I'm excited whenever you mention media. We all understand the role
I
and
know.
place that the media
Yeah.
can play as far as promoting FoRB is concerned. And that's why
Yeah.
you're bringing this conversation to you, our dear followers and viewers from wherever you are following and listening to us from. As I mentioned in the introduction, remember you can keep us posted as far as what you think FoRB is to you on our social media platforms. On Facebook, we are the program for Christian Muslim relations in Africa, and on Twitter we are at @Prokmura_Prica, and on YouTube you will find us at Prokmura Prica. Now, Sheikh, as we bring this home, maybe your last thoughts, but you allow us to go to Nigeria, then we come back to you.
Sure, no problem.
Yes, Reverend Ukoha, what are your closing thoughts? What or where do you see FoRB in Africa? Or how paint us that picture in the going into the future, and summing it up with your closing thoughts as far as this topic is concerned.
Thank you very much, Sam, for packaging this wonderful episode. I am thrilled that I'm on the same platform with Zainab and Sheikh. I've learned a lot from through this conversation. Sorry. I've learned a lot from them through this conversation. My position has changed on the fact that I believe that there's a religious basis whereby we can stand on. We have a religious basis that we can stand on to promote FoRB. Senab has capped it up by making my belief to be stronger, that we have a religious basis to promote FoRB. Also, Sheikh also mentioned from some Quranic basis that give us the platform to promote FoRB. So I'm leaving this conversation stronger in my belief and affirmation that we can stand on scriptural text to promote FoRB. Number one. Number two, that we can jointly and regardless of our differences, we can also join hands together to promote FoRB. Number three, we have many avenues. We have all the media platforms, we have all the town halls, we have all the people within our religious community as raw materials or instruments we can use to promote FoRB. We have also, we can hold our hands together in mutual collaboration. I'm happy that Zainab is a very young and passionate Muslim who have been in the, even though she said just 4 years experience, but I've learned a lot from her and tapped a lot of energy from her. And I think with this kind of tapping of resources and mutual collaboration and building synergy, I see FoRB as having a great future within our continent. However, I just want to advocate that, like I've said before, FoRB is not all about only about religion. Even if we want to limit it to religion, we must not forget the fact that we have also minority religious community, the Hindus, the 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 atheists, those who don't believe in anything, the Buddhists, and all these are part of religious community we have in Africa. These people, their religion must not be violated on ground that they are minority. We have to bring them on board to promote FoRB. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Ukwa. You wanted to say something?
No, I've concluded. I've concluded.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Okoha. And now, Reverend, you are. Sorry, I'm mistaking Sheikh for Reverend here. But Sheikh, maybe your closing remarks and basically your closing thoughts. Looking into that camera, what would you say maybe to the religious communities and the policymakers, everybody, generally the entire society, as far as FoRB violations are concerned?
Thank you. I think one for to the religious communities and religious practitioners, let's be very honest and practice our the teachings from the scriptures truly, so that we do not take advantage and misinterpret those scriptures to suit our own whims, our own personal desires. If we truly preach the scriptures, you will realize that we will embrace everyone. We will appreciate the differences that we have, the diversity that we have, and we will not mislead our flock in terms of those practices. Then also, let's be very honest and straightforward with the governance structures, especially when it comes to political issues and economic issues, and be able to tell off the leaders or the rulers when they go wrong. Let's not use religious platforms to promote partisan political interest, like we have seen in Kenya, where specific or certain religious communities or religious institutions, they support certain political affiliations, and therefore you leave out your other congregants, because then those ones who do not embrace those political affiliations, then they are left out. So let's preach the word of the Almighty God, and let's stop using our institutions to promote certain affiliations, certain political engagements. And let's also be able to tell the political leaders where they go wrong. Let's be able to correct them. And let's also be able to correct the community, especially when it comes to matters corruption. People who are corrupt, they actually come to our churches and mosques. Can we be able to tell them on the face that
Sure.
We do not appreciate the practices that you espouse, because that's not what the Almighty God wants. So for me, basically, let's speak out and let's not be silent on matters religion and governance.
Okay, thank you so very much, Sheikh. If we can have Zena. Zena, are you there? Or oh yeah,
I'm here.
Your closing remarks in a few seconds, probably.
I don't have a very long one. For me, it would just be to support civil society organizations and human rights defenders. They're doing a lot of work in relation to FoRB, but they need our support, as people who are passionate about FoRB-related issues. And support could mean mobilizing resources for them, offering them legal aid or legal support. That would be mine, just supporting CSO's work. Thank you.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That has been today's conversation, but you can still keep this conversation going through our social media platforms. On Facebook, we are the Program for Christian-Muslim Relations in Africa. On Twitter, we are Procmura, that is @Procmura_Prica, and on YouTube, you will find us at Procmura Prica. And until next time, I've been your host, Sam Abuya. God bless you. God bless Africa.